Hi folks, you're with Tacitus Today. Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the hit pieces that have been, vomiting, pouring out of the leftist media establishment to denounce the protests against mass migration. And I'll just sort of focus on a couple of them here, but they could be one of many. Now, to say their propaganda is being kind. Let me just give you one. Now, this is a longer piece. It's about 1,000 words. Now, again, the authors are put up as independent academic experts, and they're actually far from it. There's a dweeby little gay guy who, in his own writings, claims that he was, horribly bullied when he was a kid at school, and his whole purpose in life ever since then is to have vengeance on the people that, and he sees that straight behavior or masculinity in his view is the primary culprit. His co-writer is a radical feminist activist, and her position is to comment on fascism and supposedly neo-Nazis being everywhere. And, she's a DEI, affirmative action hire. So the two of them are writing this article. Now, it's no surprise that they're hardly impartial and make no attempt to be, by the way. That it's put up as a headline media piece is the problem here. That something like that should never make it into print. But instead, it's not only made it into print, but again, it's headlined. So in a 1,000-word piece, the word masculinity is mentioned 19 times, far right 6 times, racism 4 times, and neo-Nazi twice. So if you sort of break up the paragraphs that make up this article, there's one of these terms, masculinity, far right, racist, neo-Nazi, is mentioned in every single paragraph. So there's no doubt about where these folks are going with this. Now, the thrust of the piece is to present the march, the protest in ideological terms. The marchers were mostly men, which proves the masculinity and the masculine nature and the oppressive nature and the cruelty inherent in the march itself. And this masculinity is tied closer to the far right, which raises issues of Hitler and Nazis, and there were reports of swastikas and fascists and neo-Nazis, and this is how the thing. So there's not even the slightest attempt at objectivity. Where people are quoted, it's only other activists that are saying, fascists everywhere. Oh yeah. So. Now, the problem, I have 2 problems apart from the fact it's just hysterical propaganda. A couple of problems here. Try and present something that's balanced, and you're likely to get through. People are likely to listen and take note if you try to be objective. When this is so brazenly one-eyed and going in one direction only, that anybody that protests mass migration is a fascist, Nazi, swastika-waving Hitler, then you're going to lose pretty much any of your audience that might be swayed by a persuasive argument. Now, I would suggest there is no persuasive argument to put here in support of or to denounce the protesters. The mass migration is off the charts. 500,000 people a year being brought into a country of 26 million. I mean, are you kidding me? Or nearly all of these from people, very different, very alien cultures. Even when there was quite a lot of, in relative terms at least, the mass migration, and we're talking, somewhere between 50 and 80,000 a year back in the day, but where there's quite a lot of mass migration migration, I wouldn't call it mass migration then, from other places in Europe, like, say, Greece during the communist trouble in Greece, southern Italy, people recovering from the ravages of World War II, those sorts of things. that at least the people coming in, migrants during they had skills, and they were Christian, and they were European. So not that there weren't differences, there were, and there was propaganda around at the time about how white people should marry, white men should marry Italian girls, and things like that, without realizing that the real pushback was from the deeply Catholic Italian families that wanted their daughters to marry another Italian. Even then, back then, they were lumping it was the white guys who were the problem, when it wasn't. But coming back to the thing, the people coming in are overwhelmingly very different from, culturally and spiritually and religiously very, very different from the Australian culture. So there's a very different sort of people being brought in, and this adds to the concerns that the local citizenry have. They never asked for this. They never voted for it. They never approved it. And when they're asked, they say they don't want it. But this is something that the leftist hit piece avoids. Now, if they had a balanced article, they would firstly say, and the two authors, there's this dweeby gay guy who's trying to gain vengeance on all the straight people who bullied him when he was a kid. So that would really dilute heavily, the message of that. And then a radical feminist activist who hates men and hates families and hates this and pushes the Marxist thing, and that would also dilute it. And then coming into they balanced out the article. So so they do say masculinity is toxic and evil 19 fucking times, by the way. Then they should balance that out ideally by saying, well, the people never voted for this, and they justifiably in democracy are concerned that something they haven't voted for is being forced upon them. Just that alone would be, a huge leveler in terms of the quality of the impartiality and the argument itself. And they're trying to say that anyone that objects to mass migration of very foreign and alien, but just because they're Nazi racist. No, that doesn't cut it. And the affirmative action where these people coming in can't possibly get jobs in a competitive merit-based environment, so they're being gifted jobs through affirmative action, DEI, jobs that are cut off completely from white people. Why is it that every job advert that's listed, whether it's a toilet cleaner or a CEO or anything like that, they all these adverts, the online job board adverts, they all crow about how they're, we embrace multiculturalism and we have a diversity quotas and all this sort of thing. What do the local white people think of that? I mean, wow. So none of these things, of course, get mentioned. Now there's a second article that and this was a video piece that accompanied the written piece. But so they choose a girl in her early 20s or early to mid 20s, and she's got the multicolored dyed hair. She's overweight, and she talks as if she's dealing with primary school children. But her thrust of or the script she's been given to read, I don't think she understands what she's talking about. But she claims, they start off by saying, well, there's no such thing as mass migration, simply not happening. That's just something that's been invented by the far-right Nazis. And then says in the same sentence, but we must have mass migration, otherwise the economy will fall to pieces. What? And so I don't know how they can reconcile both there. The script writers obviously didn't consider this as they went blurting out the talking points. So if you went to the globalist World Economic Forum set of talking points about mass migration, this article has been taken directly from that. It's not like it's any original work or original thoughts gone into it. They then make this is migration into Australia. They then make the false claim that 3/4 of the migrants coming into Australia are actually highly skilled. They're scientists, they're engineers and doctors. Now that's beyond laughable. I mean, laughable doesn't even begin to describe it. Some in the order of less than 5% of the people coming in the mass migration thing have any sort of skills at all that are useful. And nearly all of those are from other white countries, by the way. So the idea that masses of scientists are coming in from the middle of Africa, the peasant society is beyond absurd. So they're claiming 3/4 are all scientists and the like. So a blatant falsehood. They deny that. They just pretend that family reunion or chain migration, as it's called in the US, they pretend that just isn't happening, and they focus on a very narrow data set of people, and then lie about that anyway. And it goes on to say, well, Australians won't do this work and that work and so on. So there aren't enough engineers and doctors, and that's why we have to. And if we don't, the Australian economy will fall. Again, an absolute blatant lie. So they come out with the talking point World Economic Forum type lies to justify. But again, they could have quite a bit of cut through if they tried to balance it and tried to instead of just representing the propaganda globalist mass migration viewpoint, they could balance it out by saying, well, hold on a minute. There are in fact vast numbers of chain. There's whole areas of Sydney and metropolitan Australia where people that arrived 25 years ago in the beginning of the mass migration wave still can't speak a word of English, and have existed on welfare from day one. And so why aren't they talking about that? And again, importantly, why aren't they talking about, well, Australia's never voted for this. Australians never agreed to this. Australians never asked for it. They were never asked by the body politic. It was simply imposed upon them. Do we live in a democracy or not? Because if we do, the people should have a choice. That's glossed over, saying, well, the people that would choose to say no are all Nazis anyway, so we can just ignore what they say. It's only us lesbians with gender studies degrees that should be allowed to comment on this. So the very disingenuous nature of these commentaries, with no attempt, even a minimal attempt to be objective or balanced in any way, is the sort of propaganda that's being pumped out. But it goes to illustrate, I think, that if mass migration is such a good thing, and we're arguing it is, then you don't need to tell any lies, not even a single lie, to justify it. The facts and the benefits would speak for themselves, which they clearly do not. You've been a task today at your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.